Hey Twitch, how you doing? Welcome to our second episode of Noisy Chat. Today I am with special guest Visible Studios, and we're going to be talking all things post-production, video production, audio production, and we're just going to be chatting about just all things video production, and we're going to talk about how we flip files to each other, what we see, best characteristics of each other, who we'd like to work with, who we don't like to work with. We're going to probably badmouth people, and who knows, it might get a bit saucy. We're not sure, but welcome anyone who's watching, and welcome to you guys on the podcast as well. So we're going to just dive straight into it. So lads, this is the crew, or some of the crew from Visible Studios, and I'm going to get you guys to just introduce yourselves. Let's go in order. We'll start with you, Nick, and just tell us a bit about what your role is, and we'll start from there.
Hey, I'm Nick Kozakis, and I'm a director and editor at Visible Studios. Yeah, that's basically it. I just exploit everybody else's talents and claim it as my own success. So,
Tim?
Hi, I'm Tim Whiting. I am a producer at Visible Studios. I'm also a post-production supervisor and colorist. So, yeah, Nick exploits me so that we can make a video.
And I'm Liam Kelly. I am also a director and editor at Visible.
I'll take those Visible Studios you did cut out there, mate. It's all good.
It did cut out, yeah.
All good. We'll just keep cracking on. So, lads, tell us a bit about what you guys have been up to. Maybe you don't even have to say the last 12 months, but tell us about some of your big projects that you've been doing recently.
Yeah, so we've been working across quite a few projects. We've been working on like series in the background. I guess our biggest projects, we're doing commercial and corporate stuff and whatnot, but some of our biggest stuff has just been music videos. So we've been getting quite a lot of exposure through that. And yeah, I guess that's like the last big project that we released and launched. And yeah, it's been getting a bit of play, which has been lucky. It's been good.
I did check that out today. I see Turns and I, so Dance Monkey's up to, what was it, about 935 million views. So we're about to crack that big 1 billion, right? That's friggin' huge.
Pretty insane.
Have a big ISO party once it passes it.
Yes. It sounds like there'll be lots of juices flowing there, lots of booze and lots of fun. Well, for some. Mate, that is so exciting. So obviously, that's on the backs of some amazing work by you guys, but also what a killer track. She's just done so well. Yeah, nice.
I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how big it is. I don't think it's really clicked with any of us, like what the numbers are. Like, it's very rare to get 1 billion views on a music video.
Yeah.
And
and especially for sorry to cut you off, Tim. Especially for Tones, like I think she just like last week cracked. She broke the record for the most streamed song by a female artist, like in the world. It's the biggest female song ever released.
That is huge. That's so amazing.
And what I always say, these guys have heard it too many times, but the difference between 1 billion and 1 million is about 1 billion. Like the number is so massive.
Yeah, that's it. Seriously, it really is.
You could take away 1 million and you'd still be at about 1 billion.
Yeah. That's huge. So obviously, doing things like the video clips and stuff is the passion of you guys. Like, the reason why I know at least two of you, but we've worked together on feature film before, and we obviously I'm your guy for all the corporate stuff, which pays the bills. And I guess that's what I want to talk to you guys about. Like, so where are your passions? And obviously you're doing the corporate stuff to make the coin, to bring the make sure there's bread on the table, but also is the idea that it funds future projects. Like, what are you guys, I guess, as a group, but individually, what are you passionate about?
Tim's good at answering this one, so I'm going to let him take it over.
Hi. Well, the official perspective of Visible Studios now. No, I think
give us the elevator pitch, right?
Yeah, like you said, the corporate stuff is really paying the bills. Like, we really do enjoy doing it, and even when we do corporate video, we try to make it quite cinematic and try to push our own boundaries on that. Like, we don't like to do very stock standard. I know a lot of, like, one of the reasons we work with you is because I know a lot of people, when they're pumping out this like corporate video stuff, they don't even bother to do sound mixes and things on like that. But we always like to have like a pretty high standard of quality. I guess for most, like, if I can speak generally, I think we all have a a pretty big passion for doing narrative projects. Like long-term goals is to, Nick's already directed a feature before, and I think we're looking to create some new ones. We've also got some web series at the moment that we're developing. So music videos for us are fun. They kind of pay the bills, but they are good practice for us to be building up to narrative style things. Like even if you look at most of our music videos, like some of them are just purely performance stuff, but the things that we usually get control over and are able to dictate the themes are usually still have narrative components, even if they don't obviously involve dialogue. It still has, very cinematic visuals. It has some sort of story internally that we have. So I think like our passion is all for like making narrative, really high quality cinematic visuals, and like not even just visuals as well, but obviously the sound design and the quality of sound is a big part of that. For the projects where we can use it.
And that has become huge these days, or for a long time now, I guess since MTV, that everyone loves to have these real narrative, almost like a short film to go along with their music. So you really get to experiment there. And that's one thing I've noticed with you guys, like when you're posting, everything's different, you're trying new flavors. You guys were working with, I saw the robot arm. Is it with Robot Face? What's the company here in Melbourne?
Robot Face. Yeah, Robot Face.
So doing just pushing the envelope as much as you can. It's really cool. It's great. I guess so. What is the future plan then? You're talking. Can you talk about anything that you're planning to do in the future when it comes to features or anything like that? I saw you're about to release a web series. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, so we've got a web series which is called Earners, and it was just a bit of fun, really. So our cinematographer got sick, and he decided to write a screenplay, and it was like a crime-based screenplay, but then just dissecting it a little bit, he found a lot of the humor that he's personally experienced, and he just decided, you know what, not from a crime perspective, but from like his friends, like just going back and forth, and he just combined the two and wrote this comedic thing. And myself and Liam have directed an episode each, and he's got a few more on the boil, but it's it's something that's coming out this Thursday, and pretty excited about it. So it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice. Anyone out there?
People.
Yeah. Anyone out there? I'll share some links on the Discord. If you haven't joined, you should join my Discord. And we'll put some direct links up there, which is sweet. Cool. So let's talk about, like, predominantly my audience is going to be audio people. So would you guys like to talk to me about audio people that you use or like to use? Like I'd like to know, what do you look for in an audio person, whether that's sound recordist or post-production? Because if, my audience is going to be predominantly sound guys, I'd like for them to get some tips on what kind of person to be, to work. Someone, your attitudes, your, I guess, skill level, that kind of stuff. But what do you guys look for in an audio person, whether it's post or sound recordist?
I know from a sound recordist perspective, one thing that's always appreciated on set is just just kind of being around when you're necessary, and just kind of being like ready with with the small stuff, like swapping out batteries, doing all that kind of stuff. Because like as long as kind of that stuff is all kept up to date with, and people are happy, everything's working well, then I think that it keeps the set really well oiled. So I think those kind of people who are always at one step ahead of the game are always really appreciated on set.
Yeah. So you're talking about their own batteries, like someone who's on top of that kind of stuff, or do you mean like being there to help swap out video batteries as well, or you're just talking specifically for their own area?
Purely sound. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to happen often, and that might not be the greatest example. Just being the kind of person who's like, being on top of this person, this person needs to be labbed for the next scene, or this, or whatever.
So definitely not having someone who's holding up the set because they're not on top of just general stuff.
Yeah,
like
we want them to jump in and direct as well.
Yeah, that's it. Maybe acting spots.
The other thing as well is just it's all about attitude and good personality. Like we have fun on our shoots, and I mean, this doesn't apply to everyone that's looking for a specific type of sound recordist on set, but like we're a family on our shoots, and we like to have fun. You've recorded on our sets before, and we like to have a laugh and all that kind of stuff. So it's one big family, and we like collaboration and all that. So yeah, it's about just having that confidence to join the team and become one. So like that's one thing that I like, as you know, from a person to person perspective, and then obviously for them to have their technical aspect kind of locked and in check, like all in check. But yeah, that's I just like, you know, good people, good awesome people that like to have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I guess sorry.
no, you go.
I guess what I look for when we're creating out stuff is it's just professionalism, and no one ever really says what professionalism is. Like a lot of people think being professional is just being very serious. On our sets, we're often not that serious because it's long days. It's can be very difficult. Stress can be high, and like having a bit of banter and like having a bit of fun helps that go a lot better. Because as important as all this is, we're not saving lives. We're just trying to get like a really good product, and just having a really good attitude and doing out the banner is good, but also knowing when it's time to switch on, or like not letting that distract you from being ready. I mean, it seems like it's just really simple stuff. Like even when Liam's like, "Oh, just make sure your batteries," and like obviously you would be like, "Well, that's my job." But I've literally been on sets where the sound guy was coming up to me. He's like, "Hey man, do you have any spare AA batteries like on you?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he's like, "Yeah, do you have any stuff?" I'm like, "Are you okay? Do you need us to get batteries?" He's like, "No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine." And then we got to actually shooting, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, my recorder just died."
Yeah. Okay.
And it's not like obviously if you're a professional person that won't happen, but I mean,
it can,
there's
right?
a lot
It
more
does.
people who like that. Yeah, there's a lot more
Yeah.
people, and like I've been in situations too where I've like turned up to set and I was like, oh no, I'm like, you're just missing something, or just something fell through the cracks through the rush. But it's actually dealing with that before it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
And making people aware, and just working well with people and having a good attitude. Because even if you're the best sound person in the world, if you're really arrogant, or you're really aloof, or you just can't work well with people, doesn't really matter. Because for all the gains we're getting in your normally better sound recording, we're probably losing in terms of like performance on set because people aren't gelling well, or we're having to deal with personality issues and things like that.
Yeah. So we'll let's just walk through, I guess, the process a bit then. So what kind of files, like this is going to get a little bit technical, but what do you expect from a sound recordist? Obviously on set, you want their own batteries, all the requirements, whether it's, the right amount of lavs and boom and all that sort of stuff. But I guess, what do you expect from a sound recordist when you get files delivered? Do you want to dive into the details of that at all?
I can take that one if we want, and then I'll stop.
Yeah, go for it. Only because I don't know what you want. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it depends. It's going to depend project to project and what people's workflows are. But for us personally, we work a lot in DaVinci Resolve. And one of the things we like about DaVinci Resolve is the ability to just very quickly, just auto sync files.
Yep.
Obviously, in a lot of NLEs, that's not a big thing, but especially people who are coming from like Premiere-based workflows where they don't have really any easy way to do that. We just like to be able to just like select a whole lot of audio files, select a whole lot of video files, right-click and sync.
Yeah.
So the two things we look for in audio files that we receive is, I think generally we prefer like poly files as opposed to like broken out individual audio files. And the reason for that is in DaVinci Resolve, there may be workarounds, but I haven't really found it. But it'll just attach one audio file if it finds a sync. It looks for the first one that matches, and then it goes with that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if they're broken out single audio files, you will only get one track. Whereas if they're polywavs, you'll get them all just embedded inside the shot.
Yep.
Sometimes, and like the other thing we prefer is just to have some sort of time code sync between the camera and audio, because obviously that makes it more automatic. We can sync manually with slates and stuff like that, but it just seems like a lot of time wasted. I mean, obviously we still need a slate in case something goes wrong, but just like the small thing of just having a time code sync between audio files really saves us a lot of time. It means we can just get straight into editing. It means we don't have to screw around when we're having to export our proxies for editing and stuff like that.
Yep. I guess the other thing is labeling files where you can, because even maybe not so much for you guys, when you're syncing stuff up, it might be that the sound recorder captures some extra sounds or some ambience that you chuck in your NLE. But I guess for me, even if you're doing that automatic sync and you've got what you need, if I want to dive back and find those sounds, it's important that those things are labeled accordingly.
Yeah,
Sweet.
that was one thing that I wanted to add in that, because it does make a world of difference, particularly if you do have to do any kind of manual sync. Like you said, it just saves.
Having your scenes and stuff,
Yeah,
and
having
takes
it all
labeled out.
labeled as possible. It takes an extra 5 seconds on set, and it might be a bit of a pain to kind of tweak it every time. But if the soundy is just staying in touch with the slate and just chatting to the AC or whatever, whoever's marking up the slate, then it's just another added benefit for syncing.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's good both to have that information in the file name, and then if you can also add it as metadata tags as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the advantages of if the sound team has added certain tags, it can be anything. It can just be scene, shot, and take, but it can also be like certain piece of information that might be relevant to that shot. When we bring it into Resolve, we can then migrate those metadata tags to the video as a whole.
Yep.
So if we need to search and filter for certain things, we can just set up filters that'll be like, oh, just go to scene 40 and bring up all the shots, or just bring up all the shots that were like whatever we're looking for. It just makes the editing process a bit better.
It's getting a lot easier these days with like sound recording gear has, iPad and iPhone functionality. So really typing in a bit of text in the comments or whatever it isn't really that hard these days. So I guess it is one of those things of, while, actors are getting back in place or whatever it might be, some lighting adjustments, you should be just getting in there and making those comments where you need to. That's cool. So what about, I guess, delivery as well? I've made some videos for YouTube where I'm gonna talk about tips and tricks and about delivering, basically tips and tricks for video editors, but also for sound people. But I guess, what do you guys deliver? What are your habits, or good or bad? What do you guys do when you're delivering files to an audio post guy?
Well, I mean, typically we ask what they want first, because it will sometimes differ between audio people, but generally we're doing Pro Tools export, with like a low res reference video, and I mean, I generally do 100 frame handles on the audio, just so there's a bit of leeway for whatever reason. We seem to have intermittent issues with it, and I don't know what it is. None of the files are missing from the edit, but once they're packaged up for Pro Tools, it seems to there'll be like a couple files that slip out, and we just have to like manually send them across. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a fix to it, but that seems to be one of the biggest issues we have on our end. And
Yeah, and I guess the part of, I'm not going to keep referencing the video, but I will. The videos I'm about to release, I do talk about that kind of stuff, and I guess doing things like keeping all the raw audio on a hard drive depending on what the project is. Obviously, if it's something like a big feature, it's worth sending with the AAF or RMF, depending on what you use, is sending all the raw audio as well, so that if you need to reference a file, at least you've got the original audio there that you can bring into Pro Tools. I'll be honest, AAFs they're better than OMFs, as in it's more up-to-date file system, but they're still, as you say, there's like glitches and stuff all the time. Things could be missing, and I've found even track naming, which I don't know that a lot of editors do this, but even just not labeling your tracks and stuff. But even when you do that, even if you label your tracks a little bit, they never come in order with an AF. It seems a little bit barbaric. I don't know why it's not been improved as a system, but that is what it is, right?
I mean, it depends on what you're coming out of. I find we do OMFs when we're coming out of Adobe Premiere, because for whatever reason they tend to work out better. But I know the default out of Resolve is an AAF, Pro Tools AAF. So you do get that extra bit of information. I think it's possible to like add a lot of the stuff that you want, because obviously Resolve has Fairlight built into it now.
Yeah.
So you can get a little bit deeper in terms of the information that gets sent out, but I don't think we've experimented that much with it. And I think for editors, I think a lot of the problems that we have when like certain stuff doesn't sync out, it's because increasingly people are just using, like consumer-based cameras and iPhones and stuff from the internet, which has audio tracks in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can create a little bit of an issue, especially when there's like a frame rate mismatch between the files that you're using, because you just download some stock, you've got a 25 frames per second timeline, and then you put a 24 frames per second video into that. So I think it's good before you send it out. You can sometimes sanitize those files. Like I know Resolve has a feature where you can just right click on files and just get them to extract audio and just create like an uncompressed WAV file. So if you do that and then use that to edit, it can help a lot.
Yep.
I think we're guilty of not doing that. Like you just sort of edit and hope it'll work. But yeah, just got to keep an eye out for those little things.
Yep.
And also for editors, it depends on your workflow, but when you send reference videos to sound designers, it's usually best to do an all-I codec. So something like H.264, it doesn't have information on every frame, which means when your computer is decoding it, it looks for the frame with the most information, and then there's a calculation forward to the frame that you're on. And that can create little tiny desyncs, or like stuff can move around. I think most audio people, when they get it, they just re-encode it to, like a MXF or ProRes. But I have seen people who don't do that before.
Okay.
I don't know how they're doing it, and that's just something to look out for if you're new, because you won't have completely synced.
Yeah, and I guess
when you're doing audio.
that's the thing with even files just don't. Video files or H.264 in particular just doesn't play nice in Pro Tools. And so that's one thing that I've been trying to tell people is converting that file. But I didn't really know and just like about the fact that some of that may end up being a bit out of sync. But I find even that you have sync issues with H.264 anyway, so files just never play that well, and it is hard to find, if something feels like it's in sync or not.
But it happens in editing programs as well. Like you can actually test it. I've done it in Premiere before. So you export out the video twice, and then you have like, up the top you have like a ProRes file, and below it you have the H.264.
Yep.
If you jump somewhere and you quickly on off like the ProRes one, you'll actually see a jump. And people don't realize it when they're editing, but yeah, it's just little things to look out for. Yeah,
it's interesting because I do a bit of work at the Art Center as well, and I've been trying to push a habit of making my own preset. So like DNX HR or HD, which is Avid's, definitely plays the best. ProRes plays pretty much the same through it, and I've been trying to tell them to get yourself a preset because it doesn't even have to be high bit rate. Like you can give me their proxy version, and that's enough. But I guess when you're sending files over the internet, which most of us are, especially even these days while we're all working from our home studios or whatever, it is a bit of a pain to send bigger files. But to be honest, if we're going to have sync issues, then they seem to be bigger problems than waiting an extra few hours for something to download. If there's anyone watching, guys, just feel free to chime in with some questions. If you guys have any questions for these guys, it could even be about Tones and I video clip. It doesn't matter what it is. But please ask some questions. We want that interaction. That's why I'm on Twitch. But anyway, as you were saying, do you have something to say there, Tim, or all good?
Or like, I guess it's as long as everybody in the workflow knows that's happening, because like often it is easier to just send a H.264 because it's smaller. But as long as someone's encoding it at the end of the chain before it goes into sound, you won't have any problems. It's just if you're just trying to play back it. Yeah,
okay. So that's where the issue is. It's not actually in the encoding itself. It's more the playback. So if you don't re-encode it back, if you re-encode it back, you shouldn't have any issues. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it should be fine because it's just going to create like the problem isn't with the video itself. Like all the there, it's like the processing lag.
Yeah.
Where the computer does it, and that's why you can get that thing in Premiere where it snaps back. So like once again, if you A/B it and you just watch one clip and then the other one, it'll eventually line up. But it's just that split second. And if you just keep playing through the same bit, and obviously with sound, you do a lot of jumping back and forth very quickly. So you can get really confused.
Yeah, of course.
Why stuff isn't working.
Yeah. I feel bad, Nick. We've, got you involved in the conversation, but we're smashing all the tech stuff. So
yeah, no, it's all good. I'm kind of learning, so it's good. I should have probably already known this stuff anyway.
Where's you got your pen and paper, taking some notes there?
Yeah, I'm screen recording, so
sweet.
I'll listen.
Can I ask you a question, Benny?
Please do, mate.
What frustrates you when you get a file from an editor? Like, what stuff do you commonly really see go wrong that you prefer didn't happen?
Look, unorganized edits are really frustrating. The thing is, sometimes I feel like I judge an editor on their project, as in how they order their tracks and stuff. And then sometimes I'm like, actually, I just don't think that when it converts to AAF or OMF that it's not exported well. So a lot of the times just not having an organized edit is a real big pain. So whether it's just not putting things in the same channel, sometimes that's hard because like sound recorders will record for some scenes, they might record 4 channels, then it's 2 and things just move around and it's fine. I just got to get it organized. But not having things like a 2-pop in their videos, I feel like that doesn't make sense to me. As in, obviously sync is really important for the composer as well as for the sound and stuff. So for smaller projects, it's not a big deal, but like for a feature, having 2 pops is really vital. So that we obviously can check from start to finish that everyone's in sync. Just bad audio, it's not really your fault when sound recorders aren't doing a good job. But I think that's one thing, and I guess even probably a better question for Nick as a director and for you guys, do you prioritize audio on set when you're doing something like a narrative? Because sometimes, I did a feature film recently, and this may be something that most directors don't think about, which the sound recordist really should and tell the director. But there was one scene, it was a cafe scene in this feature, or a restaurant scene, and this couple was talking, and they were really quiet, which, in an emotional scene, maybe they're doing it because they, want to add emotion to it. They're just kind of quietly talking. They don't want other people to hear. But you've got traffic outside, which is, something you can't fix when you've got traffic outside. But then the one thing that was the most frustrating is there was obviously an extra in the kitchen who wasn't in shot, who was in high heels, walking around, and their feet were clunking through this audio. And first of all, it's the sound recordist's responsibility to pick that up and be like, I can't hear what's being said here. It was like, the fan noises or general hum of the room and then the traffic is bad enough. But to have these clunking high heels, it's like, first of all, extras don't wear shoes if you don't need them on, if they're not in shot. But also, if you're not in shot at all, don't move. And I guess, as guys who work on set, it's not, say, the DOP's responsibility to think about those things. They're even obviously, like, for them, an extra is important in a shot because the extra is going to add, to the story that there's people, it's, stuff's happening. And that's their job to make sure that person's in the right spot or whatever, or lit or whatever. But I guess, do you guys as directors, do you think about that stuff, or it's more like, let's say you don't because you've got a million other things to think about, but if an audio guy said to you, this is an issue, how do you deal with that? How,
Yeah,
feel free to respond.
I guess from my perspective is that Liam and I, we come from like a type of directing which is a little bit, I don't know, I find it to be a little bit different. We're very technical, and we also think with an edit in mind. So when we shoot, we know exactly what we're going to need for the sake of the edit. So like, for example, if the shot is, like someone's talking about how they're breaking up with someone, I don't need to get that all perfect because I feel as if I'm going to be like, I know, like I'll get most of it, but like if it drops out of focus or whatever it might be, I know that I'm going to be focusing my shot on the person's reaction, on like the other person that's being broken up with.
Yeah.
So like we know we can sort of give a bit of grace, and with that, when it comes down to like the audio, it's, for me, I think good audio is better. Like I trade that for like a clean shot. So like it's about the audio. And I think you can forgive an average shot, but you can never forgive bad audio. Like you just can't. So it's like if it's very rare. I'd say, like, I don't think I've ever said no to it, but usually if a soundie comes up to me and he's like, hey, I could hear something in the background, or, I didn't get that, can we get one more for sound? I'll always most likely just go for another one.
Yeah.
And again, that comes down to communication as well. Even circling back down to the, like, kind of, being the type of person on set who's professional, like, that's part of it is, being, because we want to know, we don't want to get to the edit room and just be like, oh shit, the extra was walking around in high heels. It's up to the soundie to communicate that. And like Nick said, we're always happy to kind of accommodate that, because this bad sound is just is much more jarring than any kind of visual slip.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've done a bunch of sound recording interviews for the Art Centre, and so this is just a series for the Australian Music Vault. So we were interviewing celebrity musicians, and so I did Tina Arena. Like, there were some amazing interviews and stuff. But well, Tina Arena, my dad was a big fan, so I've got props for her. But
hey, I like Tina Arena.
Yeah,
I like
sweet,
Tina Arena.
sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah, sweet. But I did sort of half of these because I started at the Art Centre when they were shooting these. So I did about half of them, but I did basically and still am doing all the post. And I find it so interesting. Some of the sound is like, it may be the intimidation of being in that room with, someone who's directing who might be pretty intense. Then you have this celebrity person talking and they just don't have the guts to say, can we stop? Because you're hitting your mic or it's moved and now it sounds awful or whatever. And so many times I'm like, why didn't they just wait, even wait for the thing, that moment to finish? Because these interviews, they're tight timeline. They don't have time to redo everything. But I mean, still chime in and say, can we just adjust that mic? Because, now that I'm doing the post on those, I'm like, why didn't they speak up? It makes no sense to me. And I guess it's good as a sound recordist to have that confidence than to be, for them to just speak up and say, we have an issue, can we fix it? And rather than be coy about it and, obviously get awful audio.
I guess it's in the trade-off as well. Like, okay, maybe there might be a little bit of frustration, for whatever reason. I doubt there will be, but like, let's say you're frustrated in the moment because you have to do the take again. I'd rather that frustration than to get in a post and say, well, it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially in an interview kind of situation, especially in an interview situation where there may not necessarily be, anything to cover it with. Like, it's that person talking and that's it. So it's even more important in a situation like that the communication is just on par and to get everyone, kind of making sure that it's all happy.
Yeah,
and it's
sweet.
like it's a trade-off when it doesn't work, and then it like. One, as a sound guy, you're a head of department, so it's your responsibility to be making sure that everything that you're doing is good. And if you don't, that actually, for like, say me as a producer, that can be very frustrating when you get into the edit because it's either going to cost time or money, and it's always more later on. Like in the case of an interview, it might be the case that you can never get that material ever again. And the only way you're going to get it again is if you say, oh, I just need like 2 minutes just for you to say a couple more lines, even if it's that. Or just start again. Or it's like if you're talking like a feature film and it's you either doing like you're either re-recording the audio, which never looks or sounds as good as like the original, or like if it's particularly bad and you've really screwed up, it's like, well, do we go back and shoot this scene and then there's money involved in that? I mean, you hardly ever do on most indie budgets, but it is a cost that's involved, and it's always going to be so much worse. And it's going to be so like if you just pause on set, no one's going to be like, oh, man, I hate that guy. He like makes us stop all the time. Like we understand why it's happening. But if you don't say anything and it gets to the edit suite and something is screwed up, that's when you don't get hired again or you don't get
that's it.
back.
You don't
and
get
you
the
might not
callback.
even get an explanation, right? It'll be just like, oh, mate, let's just not work with this guy ever again.
Yeah, that's it.
But on that note, you should roast us. Where have we gone wrong for you? Like, what's the most annoying thing we've done to you? So it's like, because you've been like 100% for us, so there's no complaints on our end.
Oh,
but
don't even.
I know for a fact we would have supplied something wrong that you would have just been like, those jerks.
Not at all. Seriously, honestly, like most of the stuff for so long, like, we've obviously been in a lot of the stuff we've done recently is just the corporate. And a lot of that is pretty straightforward. There's definitely been projects, I don't know if I need to list some of them, but, when just audio isn't quite to scratch just because of the locations you're shooting. But most of the time, you know it by the time you send me it. So you give me fair warning and you're like, well, by the way, like we're obviously, I appreciate that you guys come to me a lot with your work anyway, but it's like, this audio is rough. And so we need you to do your magic on it. So I appreciate that you are very aware of what's going on, in your audio and stuff. And a lot of the times it may sound pretty good on set, and all the background noise, you're like, oh, that's fine, we'll make it do. And then you get back to the studio and you're like, actually, it's pretty full on. But at the end of the day, it's not like the projects we've been working on aren't that, or in the last couple of years, they're just like, short clips or TVCs and stuff. So a lot of these issues are more with like long form stuff, when you're really working on a film, everything down to having the 2-pop there and having your tracks organized. Like that's where it's more essential because most of the time you give me music track, maybe some dialogue here or there. And, it does make it hard when you may have done this where, if you're just using lapels, if you don't have a boom, mic placement is so different on every person and everyone sounds very different depending on where the lapel is. So, so we did that one series for the local government, and they had, you had multiple different people with different voices in different locations. And if you don't have a boom, obviously everyone sounds different on a boom too, but there's still some consistency with your boom where a lapel, especially, depending on where you put it, could be vastly different. And so if you don't cover both areas, sometimes that could be a bit of an issue, but what's a bit of cleanup and EQ that can't fix those kind of things. So, but it's a bit, I guess it gets frustrating for me when I can only make it so good. And when I hand it back, I'm like, this is the best I could do, rather than if it's great, then, and this is my frustration, I guess, with a lot of indie projects is if you give me something that's pretty average, I will spend most of my time making it not so average rather than actually making something that's good, great,
amazing,
and spending all that time being creative rather than spending all that time cleaning audio and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
Well, that's a good explanation because, like, I know you said, like, that is one of the frustrations you've probably had within the past where, like, hey, we just had a lapel mic and it was just kind of there and this is what we've got. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, please fix it. And you said in the past, you were like, oh yeah, well, you guys just need to get a boom. But I think a lot of people who do indie work, what they like about the lapels is it seems on the surface as something that's very contained and doesn't tend to fit up, like get as much background noise. Yeah. So from their perspective, they're just like, oh, this is great. I just put this little here, and then I don't get too much background noise and I can hear what they're saying, and that's fine. But like I've never had it explained to me by an audio person that it's like, oh, well, because of the positioning and because I guess of how sensitive it is based on how far things are away, it doesn't mix as well as say
and I guess
mic.
The other thing is if the person's very talkative with their hands, you might get close shuffling, it moves, they hit it because they're like get emotional and they touch the mic and all that sort of stuff. And I guess I've said this to a lot of other sound or video guys because look, to be honest, for you to lug around a lapel and wirelessly hook it on and then start filming is way easier than taking a boom on a lighting stand, a boom pole, the cables and a boom mic. All that stuff is a lot more to carry. And for a single shooter, a lot of the times, it depends, with your projects, but for little, like just young guy here with his business and he shoots an interview, it does make sense to just whack a lapel, but most of the times they don't put it on the right spot. I know video guys who don't even listen back while they're filming. Once they hear that the level's right, or they even look at the level meters and see that it's metering and they don't listen back. And then they are surprised when they get back and there's, shuffling or could be just heaps of noise that they didn't even really listen for. And obviously you guys are above that degree of, averageness. But at the end of the day, a boom, yes, you might get a bit more background noise, but that to me is easier to fix or also like not a problem to have in your audio if there's just general background noise. Maybe it's a bit more reverberant, but to be honest, compared to like some of the other issues you can get with a lapel, if a lapel's not placed well, it generally sounds a lot worse than well, no, that's not true. They're both shit if they're placed terribly. Like, but at the end of the day, a boom, at least you alleviate stuff like, noise from being hit or moving. Because a lot of the times people, especially in like an hour interview, they might get more and more, comfortable and start moving more. And a boom won't matter, but a lapel might start. And this is what the issue we had with this AMV stuff is. They started, once I got on the job, I said, we should be using a boom, but they're like, we only have one boom. And I said, well, the interviewer can have a lapel because they don't talk very often anyway. Give the artist the boom. And instantly we lost all these issues of just, people hitting it and it moving. And they're all wearing because artists, they're all wearing sequence stuff and all over the top. And literally there'd be like a mic grinding on a sequence shirt and the soundy doesn't pull it up. And then the whole hour goes by and I'm like, they're like, can you clean this out? And I'm like, you want me to clean a whole hour's worth of individual, like I've got ways to reduce that in like automatically, like rather than having to go and paint every single noise out. But even then you can't, it's impossible. So anyway, I'm rambling on about this.
No, it's good. It's good. Because, it's important to know this stuff as well, because like sometimes we do, not very often, but sometimes you just kind of let that kind of go past you. And like, it's not complacency, but it's like, you just, you forget. And it's always good to know that kind of stuff. So, you know,
Yeah.
now we can tell our audio people, which is generally you anyway, hey, just pay attention, you know,
Yeah.
like, but
That's it. Yeah. That's cool. So what
yeah.
about probably more directed to you, Tim, you know, with Post Guys, what do you want for audio files? Like, so obviously we mix, what kind of delivery do you want? Well, unless you guys want to chat about anything else, but I think progressively let's move on to, you know, once I've done my mix and stuff, what are the best files to give you and how do you want things?
That's great, because I was about to move on to what I love about you.
Okay.
So what
That's-
the thing that Benny does great is whenever we do deliveries, like I don't know the particulars of how you set up your projects, but I know you mix in a way that allows you to very quickly get multiple types of exports in terms of like the audio is panned, like if it's a stereo or a 5.1 mix, and obviously like what am I trying to say? Like I'm
stems
not an
and
audio guy. Like stems and compression stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like even just on corporate video where you wouldn't think it's like a really big thing, it's actually often more important. So when you send me something, I generally, depending on the project, I generally have a 5.1 mix. I have two types of stereo mixes, one which is, you know, for broadcast standards, and one which is a little bit louder, which I know you like to do for like web.
Yep.
And then I've got stems, I've got dialogue stems, I've got VO and stuff like that. And where that's really useful is because obviously we've got our timelines, you've got your timelines and bookings and stuff like that. And if I just have a folder that has everything I need, I don't have to go back to you and like ask for it. And I'm sure you like include the cost of doing that into your prices. And I'd like that much more than just getting like a certain mix. And I've had to do this with other audio people in the back. And I'm like, oh, sorry, I've just got a deliverable. This video is going to web, but it's also going to like some catch up service and it's going to all these other places. And I get back a really specific requirement, which has got slightly different audio. Like it's something you supply me with, but with other audio people, they've given me one mix.
Yeah.
So I have to go back and then they've got a client in. So I have to wait till they can export out that client. And then my client is being like, hey, we need this audio mix really quickly because they didn't give us time. Like they just think once the file's done, we'll just get it. And once they have like some other like deliverable which has its own standards, it becomes a problem. Or like there's like a last minute, they're like, hey, we've got 1 hour. We need you to cut out a piece of like dialogue from it. And if you've given me like an already mixed dialogue track, which I've had to do in the past, I've just got the stems and it's not optimal, but I've just gone cut, done. That's what they need. They're like, we need this 10 minutes from now. We screwed up. We haven't submitted.
Yeah.
Realizes this screw up. And it's like, I don't have time to send it back to you. But I've got something that's like mixed. And as long as I hope I'm panning everything correctly and it's at least good enough to be able to pass, and it's a lot better than if I had to go back to the original edit and just slot something in.
Yeah, and look, it's not something that's favorable, but I'm sure multiple times, you know, I know I'm on the golf course. I don't play golf that often, or you know, I'm out somewhere and you're like, we need to do this cut, and I'm like, well, I'm out on the golf course, I can't do it, and you're like, do you have the stems? You know, I don't remember downloading the stems, and maybe 9 times out of 10, I've got them on my Dropbox or whatever ready to go. So I'm like, here's the stems, just reuse it, and because obviously, as you say, they should, once you line them up, the way I've got my project set up, and this is something that I'm going to be sharing more with my viewers and stuff, is if you set up your project right, then it should be zeroed out. As in, if you put everything in there as it is, it should still, like, let's just say you cut out a bit of dialogue, that might slightly lower your level, but really it's going to be at -24 or whatever your deliverable is. You know, if you just chuck it in the project, you know, your dialogue, effects, music or whatever, then it'll be my mix, you know, it'll be the way it was intended. Obviously, then you can just cut out that line or whatever you need to do. So, yeah, look, it's not ideal to always do that, but if you have, as you say, that last minute option, there's no more money anyway, and you just need to quickly get it out there. It's great to be able to have that flexibility. And it's just something I've been doing forever anyway. And I think, like, you know, it's another thing as well for archiving. You know, there's definitely been times in, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, that you go to revisit an old project and you just don't have the files, or plugins have changed and all that sort of stuff. So to have those as a backup and to archive them, it's just great. You know, just to be able to call back on those anytime you need to, it really works well. So It is a
I
good
guess there's
habit to get into.
some attraction to people and like saving a little bit of time and exporting that. Sometimes I think they like to do it because it's like, oh, well, the client will come back to me. That's a new deliverable, charge for that,
Yeah.
Which can be good. But I think from your perspective, and just it's better to just build that into your cost, because like sometimes there isn't the time. And it's like you don't have to be on the golf course. It could be like my client has come back to me at the last minute, and you're in the middle of like mixing a feature film with the person sitting in the room.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? Just like be like, hey, can we stop doing this feature? I need to re-export a small corporate video for these guys so they can like send it off. So
I prefer the thought of being on the golf course than in
yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
But yeah, it's just, and it just reflects really well on you that you've like shoot, and that you can, you know, it's saving us a little bit of time, and that you're protected in the worst case scenario, because it's the worst case scenario that comes up, because it always happens in post. Everything is always supposed to be locked. Nothing is supposed to be changed. But sometimes stuff goes wrong, and often it's not our fault. It's been a client mismanagement, or they didn't understand something, or they've signed up for something they didn't know. And it's sometimes just more important to just be able to quickly make a change than have it like really like 100%. Because if it's late and you can't get it in, then what's the point?
Just to go back to the things that I dislike about working with you guys. I was just going to say the one thing, I guess, because these things do happen a lot, and like I don't know if it's not your clients or whatever. I'm just saying, like, you guys are very last minute with your work, and I like, to be honest, I love working with you guys, and you do such a variety of projects. So if you say to me, I need this and I need it tomorrow, I'm like, okay, so I'll be staying up late tonight. But like, I'm always happy to do that for you guys, because you obviously like bring me great work, and I love working with you guys and want to keep doing that. But that's definitely the one thing that irks me the most, is the time frames you give me to work is not inducive to being creative. It's more sweat coming down, and I'm like half asleep while I'm trying to smash this thing out and do a good job. So
that's probably because we try to do it ourselves, and then we're like, oh no, it didn't work. Now let's pay someone. No.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, I think
collegiate
really
profits.
I think usually it's either because there was honestly like a thing that we just didn't care about much. Like that's a secret. Sometimes there's projects and it's just like.
I can tell.
Just like,
I can definitely tell.
It's like they've come to us and they're like, oh, this is how much we've got. And we've said to them, hey, that's not a lot of money at all. We're going to do our best.
Here's an iPhone. You can shoot it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've got it back and we're like, oh no, why do we do that? And the other thing is just sometimes like clients don't get back to us on feedback, and then we don't want to lock you into a time and a day, because we're not even sure when they're going to hand it back to us, because it was supposed to be last Monday and it's now Friday and they're still doing tweaks and stuff like that. But I think the way around it, and what people should do with their sound is keep them in the loop with what's going on.
Yeah.
Just, like, even if it's just like, hey, there's something coming. This client is being very slow. We don't know what's gonna happen with it, because they were already supposed to have submitted all their feedback and it hasn't come in.
Yeah, and that's
just like sitting there.
That's not a bad thought too, because at least if you keep your sound person in the loop, then they may, if I know the project and you say, look, there's a good chance we'll get the okay on this on Friday at 4:00 and we need it by Monday morning. And at least if I say, well, what's the project? What have you, basically if I get a rundown of what the project is, I might be able to say to you, well, maybe you don't have these things confirmed yet, but if you send me the files, I can do A, B, and C before you get the okay, or if you have to do a recut, at least I've got part of the way there. Or so, it's not a bad idea to make sure you keep them in the loop, just, for that reason alone, is to be able to get things pre-organized and stuff. So, yeah. Good thoughts, guys. Good thoughts.
So what do you hate about Liam?
To be honest, I'm not loving the beanie. No, I'm kidding. You look cute in that beanie.
Or is it because he's just silently judging you?
Because he hasn't said much, and I feel like he's just looking at me, and I can see the steam coming out of his ears.
Godfather, just
it's just that's it.
Hey, Liam, I know you've been playing around sound, like at least in the edit and stuff like that. Like sometimes you'll do some small audio work just because it's like we need it just off for review, so before we get the final mix done.
Trying to cut me out, you bastard. Yeah. That's why I hate you. You cut me out.
No chance. There's no chance of that.
No, you just let. Like it's like, well, it sounds like shit. I mean, let's make Benny's life hell later, but for now, let's just level it a little bit and like clean it out.
Auto ducking.
Yeah.
Auto ducking. Do you have any questions like sound stuff, like good like processes and stuff? That's like when you've been working on things, you're like, oh, I don't know how this works or anything like that.
As in, you're asking Liam to ask me?
I guess what would interest me is like, how do you set your project up so that I know how to get that into your project better? Because like, I know on like stuff we've been working on recently, there's like, I'll organize dialogue tracks into just dialogue tracks. Like, do they need to be broken out into like character specific dialogue? Are you happy for the dialogue just to sit on dialogue tracks as long as they're separate from like, music and effects and stuff like that? Like, what's best for you?
Yeah, so it definitely, I would prefer, depending obviously on the project and how full on it is, but to break it down, normally I would go boom. So depending on whether you got one or two booms, but you would go boom first, and you can keep the whole lot boom wise on the one channel. Like, as in, it doesn't bother me if you have two booms and kind of A/B it. Like, if you need to stagger, you can do that. But I'll generally keep my boom on one channel, at least when you're sending to me, that's fine. But then obviously lapels one to whatever. So if you can, I don't think it's important to have every single actor separated. But if you've got your main actors on their own channels, and then say, there's actors that chime in and out, maybe you have a couple for those actors. But when you've got extra sound effects or music or ambiences, it's best to then, so you can maybe start with effects. So you might have a couple of channels just for the extra effects that either you add in, temp effects, or could be effects that were recorded on set. Maybe an ambience one that same again, it might be just ambiences that were caught on set. Or if you want some sound in there for when you're doing, your temp edits to show people or whatever, feel free to put that stuff in, even if I end up replacing it. And then your music, if you want to A/B, have two music tracks and just, A/B them depending on if they're fading in and out of each other and all that sort of stuff. The one thing that I would suggest is definitely label your tracks. I know a lot of people just don't do it, and I get audio 1, audio 2. The one tip that I'm making a video about this is to number your tracks first. So you actually put 0, 1, and then boom, 0, 2, lapel 1, 0, 2, lapel 2, or you can call it by the actor, or probably just lapel's fine. But by naming it with a number, because definitely with AAFs, when you import them, it does weird stuff. If you don't label your tracks, you get like audio 1 left, audio 1 right, but then there'll be an audio 1 track, which is kind of stereo version of it. It's weird, but if you put 01 whatever, it will just help. Even if it doesn't do it automatically in the AAF, I can then just quickly whack them in the order they're meant to be in, because it does weird things where it like splits tracks. Like I might have the left one place and then a couple of tracks, and then the right will be down here. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think it also, so particularly for Premiere, if you don't label what your track type is, so if it's mono or stereo, it will just be a stereo. So even if you put a mono file in there, it'll be a stereo track. When you export it to me, I'll probably get double mono, or, it does all different things. So I would suggest, if you can, especially if obviously you guys say you're in DaVinci, I'm not sure how that works, but with Premiere, it's good to start with a clean template rather than just starting to chuck stuff in. And actually, for all your dialogue, just use mono tracks. Make sure the first 8 tracks or whatever are mono, and you've got them laid out accordingly. And then you add stereo tracks for your music, or if you've got stereo ambiences or effects, add your stereo tracks accordingly, so that you're actually using the type of track that the clips are.
As an editor, like, this may sound newbie, but I only found out recently that like all dialogue is mono. So like I had stereo tracks because that was just what it was set to default. And then it might have just been embedding, channel 1 through like both, so you're getting essentially dual mono. And, I would end up just going through all the audio and splitting it off so that it was, it was playing through both.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that the issue was actually that the track type should have just been mono.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Basically, when in doubt, mono, like, is kind of my rule. As obviously music's always going to be stereo. But I just think if you can just, if you, like me, you have a template that you work from for most things, start your template with, and even if you've got a template, label them so you know that they're mono, or just always set out your first 8 are mono or whatever, and then have a couple of stereos at the bottom for music. Like, at the end of the day, unless there's stereo sound effects that are actually stereo, like even when I'm working with sounds that I'm getting from other libraries and stuff, a lot of the times I'll get these stereo sound effects that I'll just use a left side or the right side. I won't, a lot of the sounds, unless it's like an ambience, it will just be mono, because then it's easy to pan where I want that. If I've got 2 stereos, it's kind of annoying because you got to pan both of them. And so most of the time I'm working with mono sound effects. So yeah, it definitely, if dialogue just always needs to be mono, unless you've got, even if you've got boom and lapel, it should be channel 1's boom, channel 2's lapel, and they're both mono. So yeah.
I mean, the problem is,
you say you're a noob, but everyone's doing it, right? Especially video editors, they're all doing it. They just don't. You're just using whatever the default is. You open up a new project, bam, you got 4 tracks. You don't know that they're by default they're mono. I'm pretty sure in Premiere you can actually select what your default is, so it would be worth going and making your default mono. You just obviously need to be careful when you chuck music in that you're not getting it mono too.
yeah, you can change it in like the default for most adaptive. So it's not even like you're setting it; it's just kind of guessing based on what you bring in.
Yeah.
I guess the reason they do that is for editors, it sounds better because when you have adaptive, it's like if you get a mono track, it just pans it to both the left and the right speakers, so it sounds more full as opposed to if it's just coming off the left hand side. But obviously, going between software, that's where the problem is.
Yeah, and
you can do this.
You can do with Premiere. They've got that left. There's like in the effects. There's in the audio effects. There's like a put your left channel on your right or your right on your left, so you can. It'll do. Well, this is where I'm not sure if there's an issue with that. If you have a mono track and you chuck stereo audio, I don't know how it defaults, but there is an effect in the audio effects on Premiere where it gets the left audio and puts it on both left and right, or you could do the vice versa as well.
In Resolve, you can just right click on your track and just change it to whatever you want. So
yeah, okay.
You can have a default and you can just right click. And I think that there's mono, stereo, there's like a multi-track option as well. And there's like an adaptive one. And then there's a default 5.6 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the Fairlight menu in Resolve, you can do like bus assignments and all that sort of stuff, which I have no idea about, except for the fact I had to learn how to do it so I could put a 5.1 mix out of Resolve. So you can change all that stuff, but I think by default on most stuff it's stereo, so that's where probably problems come as well, because it's probably done with audio.
On that note, one thing that's really important for all video guys, video editors, is when I get files back to you, make sure it's panned. There's so many times, I think it's happened with you guys once, but there's a client that I do some work for, and mostly it's not panned. So you'll send them a beautiful stereo track and they'll post their video onto YouTube. And, these days you can't replace a video. Once it's up, it's up. And, I've had videos that have got thousands of views really quickly. And I'm like, you do realize your audio is mono, and it's like a music video or something as well. So, I've done a post mix on a track and they've posted this thing and it's all mono and it sounds awful. Obviously, a lot of people may not notice, but that makes me sad. But they've put out this video. It's had, thousands of views, and I'm like, it's mono, for crying out loud. You didn't listen back, and they're like, oh, I didn't notice it. It's just like, maybe get some idea.
I've also had the issue, and I think it's got to do like it's gotcha with software when you send it out, and I think it does, depending on your settings out of like Resolve or Premiere, it can screw with the panning on the music.
Yeah.
So
it also makes it hotter as well.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It would.
That's the other thing. I have if you bring back a mix, I noticed this first Premiere, and I think it was actually because you pulled it up. You're like, hey, my mix is slightly hot on that. So it's something about the way Premiere operates, where it Premiere hides a lot of stuff from you under the hood and tries to make decisions for you. For example, like in the color world, when you bring in certain videos, there's like a thing in color called data versus video, and it's kind of like where the levels are and like where the maximum white is and the maximum black, like the darkest black is. And depending on what you set it, it'll like normalize it so it displays properly. But if you get it wrong, it'll take like something that's already stretched out and it thinks it's there, but it's actually here, but it stretches it out and it like gets really crushed and really bright.
Yeah.
It does a similar thing with audio mixes, and I can't remember. It might be when it's a stereo mix, but it comes in, it's like dual mono. Like it isn't tagged like in a way that Premiere can recognize it or something. And what it'll do, it'll add like 3 dB or something to it.
That's
So-
what Resolve does that with if there's any panning on it. Like it defaults the panning on, and you have to turn the panning off in Resolve, because otherwise it makes it 3 decibels hotter.
So both major NLEs do it. If you don't have your panning settings stuff, they'll actually make it hot. And I've discovered that,
which is how it works.
From you.
Yeah, because even with I've got like a 5.1 up or down mixer, and what it does is it loses. So what you've got in the center channel, it reduces it by 3 dB and disperses it between the left and right, because that's just how it works. Something I don't know the technical reason for it. That sounds bad that I probably should know, but whatever it is that the panning and how basically like your phantom center works with your left and right is it has to be, basically the same sound that's coming. If I had a center speaker, if I put that in 2 left and rights, it's going to be louder because it's 2 speakers doing the same sound at the same level. So if they don't reduce it when you have it pan left and right, then it'll be louder. So anyway, that's why it's 3 dB, but it's the same everywhere. You'll get 3 dB.
It's just something
louder
to
all
watch
the time,
for, because like we've actually had QC fails before. Like it's been uploaded to a thing and they've got an automatic system and they're like, hey, we asked for like these levels and it's not those levels. And then I go back to the audio guy and I'm like, hey, you didn't give these levels. And they're like, I 100% gave you these levels, and they reset the file. You put it through and you don't know what's happening. So it's a little gotcha that you got to look out for, and that editors should be aware of.
Yeah, sick. That's cool. Anyone got any other thoughts?
The one thing I found out working on a TV series recently was that there is normalized settings in Resolve as well. So you can always ensure that even if the panning settings, even if that's not the issue, and there's still another issue, which we did find we couldn't locate the issue, and it was just making our track hotter. The panning setting wasn't it. You could actually right click the master mix. Click the normalized setting that we had been the normalized preset that we were exporting for, and that actually got us to pass the QC. So I don't know. I think just edited the NLEs do some weird funky stuff to mixes sometimes.
Yeah, I think as long as you are aware of it and take that into consideration, then we're all good. Like I think, it is everything down to like making sure you listen back, make sure it's in stereo, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you just need to be aware of that, and it probably doesn't hurt for like another trick or another thing to be aware of as a video editor is using. So we use LUFS is the audio loudness meters, and it wouldn't hurt for you to put them on your output. So you can, once you've put it in, you can double check it. The idea is that it's the whole production, so you don't want to sit there and watch the whole thing through, but you should be able to see that there's an average, or when you export, you could check that it's -24 or whatever is your deliverable. But it's not a bad idea just to check that kind of stuff out as well. And especially if you don't have a sound guy, that's something, I know that a lot of sound people just work based off the level that they hear. So if they got their volume down, they crank all their audio or whatever. So it doesn't hurt as a habit to make sure whatever you're working on, and if you don't use a sound guy, make sure your levels are at something consistent. Whatever it is, like I got in the habit, so where I used to work for the Salvation Army in their media team, and everything we did went to web. And so I just made -18 LUFS my standard for years. And then when Spotify and all that came out, obviously it's music, but and even I guess YouTube, they've tried to kind of make it as a standard, but -16 became the standard. So it wasn't far off. It just gives you a bit extra volume. -24 is pretty low when it comes to broadcast. So, but it's just something to think about. It doesn't matter what the number is. Well, it does. You don't want it too much lower than that, but just have a consistent number. So if you're doing video series as a video guy, and if you don't have the money for the sound guy, just make sure you keep everything consistent. And that's just chucking a LUFS meter on there, which I know Premiere's got one for free. And it's just about hitting that target as much as you can. And the whole idea is you play your whole production from start to finish. So when you're doing your last check over and you're watching from start to finish, put that meter on by the end of it. If it says minus 24, you've killed it. If you haven't, then just up or down your gain by whatever it asks you to do. For me, it's a bit of a game. I friggin' love it. I'll bounce something out, and the times that I hit minus 24 exactly, I'm just like, woo, get all excited. But it's important, to do stuff like that.
Resolve Resolve has meters too in the Fairlight page that you can do for that. I think what I did is just for peace of mind, I invested in like a VST plugin that'll just, play through it, measure it, and it'll give you like everything you need.
Yep.
Like feedback. But I guess the question for editors is, what does that all mean? Like the negative 24, like, because obviously when we get, like, I just get a standard sheet and it's like, it needs to be negative 24, and then there'll be like plus or minus 1, and then there'll be like another element. So what does, like, I know.
So
it's
so there's a peak. Yeah. There's a peak, which
please
these
tell us,
days,
because I'm learning now. So
so there's a peak.
I'll get my notepad.
Yeah, great. There's a peak volume, which is depending if you're in Australia or the States, is like minus 2 dB. So dBFS it is. But basically, so if you look at, I'm looking at my meters now on OBS, it all goes to 0, right? So you've got a point that it clips. There's just got to be there's a ceiling where, although, you can turn your headphones up basically as loud as you want, the actual data itself has to have some sort of ceiling. Just like with video, you've got absolute white and absolute black. So with audio, you just have the point where it's too loud, and too loud in your file, your data or whatever. So you need to make sure that you don't ever go over minus 2. So some sort of hard limiter, something that just will not let the audio go over that. Most of your productions aren't, unless you're doing like a loud action film and you have lots of explosions and stuff, you're not going to probably tickle that. Like, as in, you won't even hit it, because dialogue, unless someone really talks loudly for a moment or whatever, they may creep up there, but you don't need to hit it, right? But the minus 24 LUFS, so LUFS is a meter that does a bit of like, it does a long-term, so the whole project long-term level, so it gets the average of the whole production, but it also does short-term. So the best way to gauge where you're at is you have a short-term, and if your short-term's hitting around minus 24, by the time you get to the end, you'll be pretty close. And so you might have a loud scene that's at like minus 10, that's just like guns and explosions or whatever, and then you just need to make sure you have some scenes that sit way under minus 24. So it's about getting that average. So the plus 1 and plus...
It's loudness over time, right? Is that is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly. So the plus 1 and minus is basically just saying you've got plus 1 or minus leeway or whatever. So if you send it to a TV station or QC, if you're minus 23.7, they're not going to say take it back and fix it. So you've got a whole dB. So technically you could push it to like minus 23.1 and you've got that 0.9 dB louder, and they'll still accept it. So it's just they're just basically saying you need to be within a 1 dB of minus 24 LUFS. So does that make sense? Do I need to elaborate on anything? So it's a great metering, because like back in the day they used RMS, which was kind of like, so you have peak, which is obviously the absolute peak of your audio, and then RMS is, so they used to have those old VU meters that would kind of bounce or whatever, and it's more of an average, like the weight of the sound, so it's kind of the full spectrum, and so it's more the average, and so your peaks might be a lot louder, but they used to just do like I can't remember what the good old days, because it's been so long, but there was just an average that people would work with, but there was great ways you could kind of cheat the system, and you can still, there's some tricks and things, but it's a lot harder to trick back in the day, you'd watch TV, and I know like most TV channels with ads, they'll definitely boost them up 3 dB or even more, because the whole point is they want to sell stuff. As in TV, they're not there for the creators, they're there for the advertisers. So ads are always louder, but they will make sure that your TV show is set to minus 24. But back in the day with RMS, you could kind of cheat it a bit more and push the levels a bit harder, because as long as your peaks weren't there, you could really push your RMS or whatever. But these days with LUFS, it's just a lot harder. And the good thing is it is over the whole production. So if it's a 30-second ad, you've still got to make minus 24. Or if it's an hour-long film, you got to make minus 24. So it means if you want to, you can have that really big, amazing, huge scene with explosions and guns and stuff, but you can only have it so long. And you'll watch, so if you watch the meters, if So I have a graph that shows you basically a line of the whole production. You'll watch it just after your massive loud scene, it will just slowly drop down over time. So I might have a really quiet scene after that for ages, and I'll do it on purpose. You obviously want your dialogue to stay kind of average, but you'll not let anything else like music get in the way so that you can bring your LUFS down. But you'll watch it slowly creep down and get back to kind of -24 when you can, work yourself out. So you just need to make sure that you just don't have too many loud scenes all the time, or at least if that's the case, then the whole production will be lower. So it's just the average audio would be lower again. So does that all make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, sounds good.
But it's just a good thing.
Great lessons.
Yeah. There you go. Well, that's what this is about. It's just so important though for guys who, even if you're doing your own stuff and you're just chucking it on YouTube and everything, it's just good to be consistent. So pick your number, and obviously for you guys, a lot of stuff you do is broadcast and then web. But like, if it's going to be web, at least keep it consistent, either -16 or -18 or whatever. So yeah, cool.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome.
Well, we've hit our time, and some, have we? What do you guys want to chat about anything else, or should we wrap it up? This has been good.
Yeah. I mean, it's been awesome. We haven't caught up personally in quite a while, so it's
Yeah,
good to it's good to see you in some way, shape, or form, even if it is through a lens, but or through a laptop screen. But look, it's going to be good. We've got some stuff coming up, and it'll be good to collaborate again. Which is there's some special stuff coming. So
where does everyone find your stuff? So where can they? What's your website? What's socials? Where should they find you?
So, I mean, we've got our own like Insta stuff where, it's like my handle's at Nick Kozakis. You got at Liam Kelly _X. Is that what it is?
It's .x, but
.x, whatever. Yeah, no, it's all right.
It's important detail.
Yeah, and you got Tim Whiting, but we've got visiblestudios.com. Tim.Whiting, yeah. I don't care anymore. But we've got our visiblestudios.com.au. We've got Earners, which is coming out on YouTube this Thursday. So that's I'm gonna look it up because otherwise Carl will kill me. We've got that coming up, and then Tim, maybe take the reins once I find this link.
So the website is visiblestudios.com.au.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of.
Yeah.
It's all right. Double say it.
I got an important
say it
text
as much.
message, but I'll just go over everything Nick said. The website is visiblestudios.com.au with an S. The Instagram is, I believe, at Visible Studios. And then, obviously we have our own personal ones. Look up Earners on YouTube. It's coming out this week. And then, potentially go watch Dance Monkey because we want that to hit a billion.
Yeah, you need to hit that billion views. Watch it at least 10,000 times each.
Just keep watching it. Watch it almost as much as you're going to watch Noisy Post.
That's it. Yeah, 100%.
Keep doing this. Just have both on and just keep refreshing them.
I like that.
Yeah, just enter on that search bar. But we've got it on the Earners is on the ManuProd YouTube page. So I don't know if you post this stuff towards the end, but we'll send links to everything. But it's a cool little project. But Tones and I, let's get that up. We've got Bad Child out, which just got released, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and that's getting some numbers, which is kind of nice. And today I heard it on the radio like 3 times, which is pretty awesome. So
you did an awesome job with that. It was great.
Yeah, we tried to push. Well, Liam tried to push the boundaries. We complained about it, and then we're benefiting from it. So we whinged a lot, but it turned out great. So we're pretty happy and proud with the final result.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great. We should do it again. Let's talk shop.
Absolutely.
Honestly, people will learn. Yeah, well, we should. We could just talk shit about nothing. But I think this is so important for people to see both sides of the table, or all sides of the table, and actually just I don't think we take enough time to chat this kind of stuff through and really learn from each other. So it's been awesome. All right, guys. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, lads. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Twitch, for joining in. And look, I'll be going live again probably tomorrow. So we're going to go through my template, and we are going to go, and I'm basically going to clean it up. And for you subs out there, I'm going to give that to you for free, so you'll be able to check it out and modify it for yourself for your own needs. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.